I want to ask the Taoiseach to condemn the coup in Bolivia. I'd ask him whether he thinks there's any other term that appropriately describes a situation where an elected president is forced to resign by the military, where the army is on the street to protect the coup, shooting and killing protesters, where supporters of Morales' party, MAT, have been dragged out of their homes, where a mayor from MAT was dragged through the streets, her hair cut off, covered in paint, with indigenous flags being torn off, the uniforms of the army being burnt by crowds of the far right. And in a situation where the military has installed as replacement a woman, Janine Anez, who is a white supremacist, who has not a single indigenous person in her cabinet, who has previously tweeted about dreaming of a Bolivia free of indigenous satanic rites, and who has said that the capital city is not for the Indians, they belong in the high plateau or El Chaco, and has recently signed a decree effectively giving permission for the armed forces to engage in whatever human rights abuses that they want in trying to put down those protesters who are standing up against the coup. Will the Taoiseach speak out against this coup, or will he continue to effectively endorse this coup by refusing to call it for what it is?
Thanks, Deputy Taoiseach.
Thanks very much. Deputy Martin earlier asked about the future structure of British-Irish relations post-Brexit, and he rightly pointed out that after Brexit we won't be in a position to meet British ministers in the way we do now, every 3 or 4 times a year at the Council of Ministers in Brussels, or more frequently when it comes to the European Council. So one of the suggestions we're working on is to strengthen and restructure the BIIGC and to use that Good Friday Agreement institution as a mechanism to ensure a structured engagement between the Irish Government and the British Government. And this is something I intend to pursue with the Prime Minister if he's re-elected, or the new Prime Minister if there is one in the next couple of weeks. The matter of landing cards hasn't been discussed, to my knowledge, with the British Government, but we will monitor any proposals as they develop. In relation to Israel and Palestine, I haven't had any engagement with the Israeli Government or Israeli politicians, but I have met with the leadership of the Palestinian Authority when they came to Dublin. The Taoiseach, however, is actually in Israel and Palestine this week and is continuing his efforts to deepen our engagement in the region and help to bring peace to the territories. I think Deputy Boyd-Barrett asked about meaningful EU action like sanctions. The simple fact is that when it comes to issues like defence and common foreign security policy, the EU only acts with unanimity. And there won't be EU action given that the 28 countries are not unanimous in their positions on Israel. Some being very pro-Israel and being very supportive of Israel, and others being closer to the Palestinians. So without a move to QMV on foreign policy, I don't see any EU-wide sanctions being imposed or action being taken. I've met with President von der Leyen twice now, and I hope she'll be able to visit Dublin soon. We'll be at the European Council next week, next Thursday and Friday, and we'll actually be watching the votes. The results come in on Thursday and Friday at the European Council, so it promises to be an interesting one. And the next steps will really depend on the results of the UK elections. But there is the possibility of a special council in January or February to set out the EU's negotiating guidelines for the next phase of talks, which is negotiations with the UK on the free trade agreement and security and political partnership. But that's all a few steps ahead because we don't yet know what the outcome of the UK elections will be next week. Michel Barnier will remain in a role as a negotiator on behalf of the EU, and Phil Hogan as Trade Commissioner will have a central role being the Trade Commissioner, given that a huge part of the future relationship is going to be free trade. In terms of Irish issues, at least I hope we'll still have the team of me, the Taoiseach and Helen McEntee in place for the next phase of discussions, and I think it would be very much in the country's interest that that be the case, given the contexts and competencies that we've built up over the past 2.5 years in representing Ireland when it comes to Brexit. I'll have to be honest and say I haven't been following the events in Bolivia closely, but absolutely I would condemn any military coups wherever they occur.